name is Dr. Tina Montreuil. I am a clinical psychologist and associate professor in the Department of Educational and Counseling Psychology at McGill University. In this brief video, we'll talk about the importance of self-compassion more generally, but also its application and usefulness in our daily interactions towards ourselves and others. Self-compassion consists in giving ourselves the right to make a mistake or to have fallen short of certain personal expectations, when we would have otherwise resorted to disappointment, anger, or anguish. It's quite normal to feel disappointed or even angry when we're confronted with suffering, loss, or the lack of support when we're going through some very difficult and trying times. Although we don't want to find ourselves in such a compromising situation, we can still come out on top, depending on our perspective and how we react to the situation. This is a learning opportunity where we can show ourselves grace, offer emotional support just as much as we would offer a close friend or family member who is also experiencing discomfort and going through a difficult period of adversity. Self-compassion is useful because it allows us to treat ourselves with compassion and kindness, to give ourselves the right to make mistakes, to fail, to meet certain expectations, or to carry out a task or a role that we had expected. Self-compassion can be exercised by apologizing for having reacted impulsively in anger, anxiety, or fear. So it's not about telling ourselves that we're better than others or making excuses. Instead of blaming ourselves, feeling guilty, or resenting the mistake or disappointment, we need to take a more positive attitude towards whatever is undesirable. Whereas guilt and blame lead to the resurgence of other negative emotions that affect our moods in an unfavorable way, to isolation and withdrawal, self-compassion leads us to react in a more appropriate way, so to accept the situation as it has arisen and encourage us to make amends or give ourselves another chance. This is not complacency, since self-compassion leads us to action, to consider other opportunities and possibilities, and the right to gradual learning. It's possible that certain cultural values don't advocate or aren't entirely conducive to a self-compassionate approach. However, it's important to remember that a self-compassionate response to oneself increases the likelihood of positive, empathetic feedback towards others. A caring attitude such as self-compassion encourages acceptance of the things that we can't change in the other. In this way, it encourages acceptance and reduces the need to judge oneself and others. All in all, self-compassion helps us to better understand and accept the useful perspectives and values that stem from our family heritage, and encourages us to accept and not pass judgment on those that might be perceived as less useful. Self-compassion also helps us to avoid blaming ourselves when we wish to voluntarily distance ourselves from family values that may be harmful or unhelpful. Self-compassion may be part of the values that are fundamental to certain religious cultures, but it can be practiced in the absence of religious frameworks. Self-compassion stems from a therapeutic approach known as acceptance and commitment therapy. The effectiveness of this approach has been validated by numerous scientific studies. It's true that self-compassion overlaps with certain principles of Eastern religions. However, many people practice self-compassion outside of religion. Just as it is possible to practice self-compassion while adhering to any religion, the practice of self-compassion can be an interesting complement to religious beliefs, since it can soften the moral judgment perspective that characterizes some religious beliefs. The very thought of self-compassion may give rise to the impression that we are being selfish or that we are allowing ourselves a certain privilege that we would not grant to others. Self-compassion, when practiced properly and appropriately, does not lead to selfishness. On the contrary, by giving ourselves the right to make mistakes and to have a second chance, This benevolent attitude will have the effect of increasing our capacity to act in the same way towards others. Self-compassion encourages empathy, the equivalent of giving others the right to make mistakes too. An individual's capacity for self-compassion, such as openness and acceptance of a certain vulnerability, will have the effect of making us more empowered and confident in our own ability to handle difficult situations. It's not a question of becoming more vulnerable, which is characterized by a loss or absence of means. On the contrary, the practice of self-compassion represents the acquisition of a means or strategy for managing complex and more challenging situations. Self-compassion, the ability to avoid blaming ourselves and others, provides a protective blanket against victimization. A self-compassionate approach increases the likelihood of not telling or accepting negative support, mistreatment, or even violence from others. So we have everything to gain by optimizing our ability to show self-compassion. Now it's up to you to practice self-compassion.